this election really is almost over, and it's so close. We've been telling you that day after day. This race is basically tied. So what we're going to do today and tomorrow is to give you the case for if each candidate wins, what is behind their victory. Today, we're going to look at Donald Trump. If he wins, why will that have been? Now, if you're a Harris supporter, don't throw stuff at Harry Enten. We're going to cover the flip side of it tomorrow. CNN senior data reporter Harry Enten is here, and we're looking at the case for a Donald Trump victory, starting with what I do think has been long one of the most overlooked numbers of this election, but could be one of the most important.
Yeah, all right. So, look, just 28% of Americans, voters, think the country is going in the right direction, is on the right track. And I want you to put that into a historical perspective for you. Okay, what's the average percentage of the public that thinks that the country is on the right track when the incumbent party loses? It's 25%. That 25% looks an awful bit like that 28% up there. It doesn't look anything like this 42% doesn't look anything like this 28%. So the bottom line is, very few Americans think the country is on the right track at this particular point. It tracks much more with when the incumbent party loses than with it wins. In fact, I went back through history. There isn't a single time in which 28% of the American public thinks the country is going on the right track in which the incumbent party actually won. They always lose when just 28% of the country believes that the country is on the right track.
It is you are swimming upstream if you're trying to win in this environment. Also, President Biden. On a micro level, a lot of the coverage today is over something President Biden said. On the macro level, what kind of a weight is he on the Harris campaign?
Yeah, so, Joe Biden isn't on the ballot, but he's certainly in the minds of Americans, right? So I went back and I looked, okay, was the successor of the same party when the president's net approval rating was negative at this point, which Joe Biden's most definitely is. He's 15 points underwater. Now, we don't know if Kamala Harris is going to succeed Joe Biden, but we know back in 2008, George W. Bush, his approval rating was down in the 20s. Did a Republican succeed George W. Bush? No. How about in 1968? Lyndon Baines Johnson, his net approval rating was negative. Did a Democrat succeed Lyndon Baines Johnson? No. How about in 52? Harry S. Truman, his approval rating was in the 20s, if not the upper teens. Did a Democrat succeed Harry S. Truman in 52? My memory, no. No, as Kate Baldwin says.
Diano.
No. Diano.
Separate story.
Well played.
Close. Wrong time of the year.
Well played.
Dwight Eisenhower, a Republican, succeeded Harry S. Truman. So the bottom line is, for Kamala Harris to win, she'd have to break history, be a Democrat to succeed Joe Biden when Biden's approval rating is way underwater at this point.
Again, it could happen. It just doesn't in recent history for sure. Okay, registration numbers, Harry.
Yeah, Republicans have been registering voters in big, huge numbers. They have been gaining in party registration versus the Democrats in the swing states with party registration. We're talking Arizona. I think it's a 5-point. They've expanded their lead from 5 points from where it was back in 2020. How about Nevada? Big Republican registrations there. They like the early vote. How about North Carolina? Big Republican registration games. How about Pennsylvania? We spoke about it before a few months ago. Big Republican party registration gains versus from where they were 4 years ago. So Republicans are putting more Republicans in the electorate. The Democratic number versus the Republican number has shrunk. And so the bottom line is, if Republicans win, come next week, Donald Trump comes next week, the signs all along will have been obvious. We would look at the right direction being very low, Joe Biden's approval rating being very low, and Republicans really registering numbers. You can't say you weren't warned.
Again, this is the data which supports the idea of a Trump victory. Tomorrow, viewers, you will get the other side.
Stay tuned.
Kate.
It's not even the content, but sometimes Harry's delivery is just it's very scary. You're just a very scary man. You're a very scary man. Thank you, Harry. Again, tomorrow, the other side of it. They're talking about the swing states as they were just laying out very aggressively. And so try this theory on for size. The swing states of today may not be the swing states in play 4 years from now. Let us go to CNN's Zach Wolf for much more on this. Zach, explain.
Well, to all the people, the vast majority of Americans who live in a state that is not a swing state, it might feel like you're a little left out of this presidential election because your electoral votes, they're just counted for one side or the other. These states change, so rest assured. And you don't have to go very far back in history to find a completely different group of swing states. So if you go back to the last 3 or so elections, you frequently see Florida, you see Ohio, you see Arizona, but there's some other states that have kind of fallen off the map. And you know what? Florida and Ohio are two of those that are very much not swing states, at least not right now. If you look at a graphic of which states were most competitive in the most recent elections, and if you go back a little further, let's look at it right there. So Arizona has kind of come on the map. Colorado, not so much a swing state anymore, but it had its time in the sun. Florida and Ohio were clearly, those were the main swing states. You look at Missouri in 2008, there were like 100 years of U.S. history where Missouri was considered the swing state. It was the one that people looked to as the bellwether for what the country was going to do. Minnesota, not so much a swing state this year. 2004, most people's memory, that was one of the big states. If you go back even further, Californians, it seems like they're so locked in for Democrats right now, and it seems like they're going to be locked in for some time in the future. But you go back 1988 to 92, they swung from Republican to Democrat, and they haven't looked back. And people have been talking, for instance, about Texas. If at some point, that's like the great white whale for Democrats. If at some point it does start to turn blue, that would completely rearrange the electoral map. Some of these states change. Their demography changes so much from year to year, especially with COVID. A lot of people died. The baby boomers are going to start aging out. Younger people are going to start, becoming able to vote. So these states are going to change. They're going to change before our eyes. And the entire point is today's swing states might be very safe next year.
Zach, kind of look at that. The look back and the graphic there is a fascinating thing that you've put together. Does it seem like battleground states are kind of dropping faster or transitioning quicker to blue and red given just redistricting, gerrymandering, where the country is, and the demographics of just what you've all explained?
Yeah, there are a lot fewer swing states or battleground states today than there used to be. If you look at some of those maps, in particular, like 2000, one of the closest elections ever, there were so many states on that line that were very close. We all think about Florida with the hanging chads, that decided it. New Mexico was extremely close that year, and so was New Hampshire. If New Hampshire had been a little bit different, the election would have been changed.
Fascinating. Great insight, Zach, as always. Thank you so much. Zachary Wolf. You can find more of his insights in CNN's What Matters newsletter.
Donald Trump is already laying the groundwork to challenge the election results if he loses next week. Here's the baseless lie he pushed about Pennsylvania yesterday.
If you have a mail-in ballot, get that damn ballot in, please, immediately, because they've already started cheating in Lancaster. They've cheated. We caught them with 2,600 votes. No, we caught them cold. 2,600 votes.
That's just not true. Here are the facts. Last week, officials in Lancaster County announced incidents of suspected voter registration fraud. They're currently investigating 2,500 registration forms, but it's unclear how many were found to be fraudulent. It also affected 2 other counties. That is not the same at all as counting illegal votes. David Chalian is back with me now, and we wanted to play this because, unfortunately, we need to sort of warn our viewers that this is likely the tip of the iceberg. Not only what we're going to hear from him, but what is already happening online by people who support him, feeding false information to unsuspecting voters.
Deja vu all over again. I mean, let's call this what it is. This is Donald Trump seeding the ground with this lie, falsehood, misinformation, disinformation to set up a potential post-election challenge, or at the very least, to set up his calling into question the legitimacy of the Pennsylvania votes when all the votes are counted. We saw this movie in 2020. We saw where it ended up. I would just caution everyone to understand that you will watch the election returns come in on election night. The votes will be tabulated. They will be fact-based, and that will be the result. And, whether or not the campaigns have legitimate challenges to take the courts will adjudicate those. But this, as you said, is baseless, and all it is setting the stage for more baseless information going forward.
Okay, well, anybody out there who has the wherewithal, please clip what David just said, send it to your friends and family, and then send it again.